August 2023. A man stands in an airport terminal, designer luggage at his side, expensive watch catching the light. He's traveled thousands of miles from the glittering towers of Dubai to the tropical shores of Jamaica. His heart races with anticipation. He's about to meet the woman he's fallen for over 6 months of late-night conversations and shared dreams. But within hours, that same man would be covered in blood, fleeing a crime scene that would shock 2 nations. She wasn't who he thought she was, and his reaction would cost her everything. But what drives a man to cross an ocean for love, only to destroy it in a single afternoon? Stay with me to find out. Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all my viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with me for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Sheikh Rashid Al-Hamad had built an empire from sand and ambition. At 57, his real estate development company had transformed entire districts of Dubai luxury apartments that kissed the clouds, shopping complexes where the world's elite spent their fortunes, office towers that redefined the skyline. His net worth ran into hundreds of millions of dirhams. His name opened doors across the Emirates. When he spoke at business conferences, people listened. When he entered a room, conversations paused. But wealth has a peculiar way of amplifying silence. 3 years had passed since his divorce from Layla, his wife of 28 years. The split had been civil, almost business-like, appropriate for 2 people who had built a life on expectations rather than passion. She'd wanted freedom to pursue her art career in Paris. He'd wanted... well, he hadn't been sure what he wanted until she was gone. Their children, 3 grown adults now scattered across London, New York, and Singapore, called dutifully every few weeks. Surface-level conversations. How's business, Baba? Fine, fine. And your work? His villa in Emirates Hills stood as a monument to success and a tomb of emptiness. 12,000 square feet of Italian marble, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking manicured gardens, a temperature-controlled wine cellar he never used. At night, his footsteps echoed through rooms designed for entertaining guests who rarely came. His housekeeper prepared meals for one. His driver waited outside, ready to take him anywhere, but where was there to go? In Dubai's elite circles, Sheikh Rashid maintained his image flawlessly. At charity galas, he smiled for photographs with other wealthy philanthropists. At business dinners, he discussed market trends and investment opportunities with the same sharp intelligence that had built his fortune. His colleagues saw a man in complete control, traditional values, modern business sense, the perfect balance of old Dubai and new. They didn't see the man who scrolled through his phone at 2 a.m., reading and rereading text messages from his children, trying to decode the warmth that seemed to fade with each time zone. They didn't see him standing on his balcony, watching couples walk along the beach below, wondering when companionship had become a luxury his money couldn't buy. His brothers had suggested remarriage. There were suitable women, family connections that made sense, arrangements that would restore balance. But Sheikh Rashid had spent 28 years in a suitable marriage. He wanted something different this time, something real, something that made his chest tighten with anticipation rather than obligation. The loneliness crept in during board meetings when he realized there was no one to share his victories with. It struck during international flights when the seat beside him stayed empty. It consumed him during holidays when his children sent photos of their celebrations he wasn't part of. This vulnerability, this hunger for genuine connection, created a crack in his otherwise impenetrable armor. And in January 2023, when he joined an online travel community, initially just to occupy his sleepless nights, that crack became a doorway. He started contributing to discussion threads about architectural photography, sharing insights from his decades of development work. The interactions felt refreshing, anonymous, free from the weight of expectations. And then he received a private message from someone named Tiana. Her first words were simple. "Your perspective on modern Islamic architecture is fascinating. I'd love to hear more." For the first time in years, Sheikh Rashid felt seen for something beyond his bank account or business connections. Here was someone interested in his thoughts, his passions, his mind. He had no idea he was about to become someone's lifeline and executioner. But thousands of miles away, another lonely soul was crafting a digital persona that would change everything. Tiana Marissa Grant had once been the kind of woman who couldn't sit still. At 26, she'd worked as an event coordinator in Kingston, sprinting between venues in heels, climbing ladders to hang decorations, dancing until sunrise at the parties she organized. Her Instagram was a burst of color. Tiana at Dunn's River Falls, legs strong as she climbed the cascading rocks. Tiana at a sound system dance, waist winding to dancehall beats. Tiana with friends at Hellshire Beach, sand between her toes, laughter caught mid-moment. She had dreams bigger than Jamaica's shores. She'd been saving to study graphic design abroad, maybe Miami or Toronto. She wanted to create album covers for reggae artists, branding for Caribbean businesses going global. Life felt full of possibility. Then came the 14th of November 2021. A drunk driver ran a red light at the intersection of Constant Spring Road and Lady Musgrave. Tiana's Honda Civic didn't stand a chance. The impact crushed her lower spine. Paramedics worked for 23 minutes to extract her from the wreckage. She woke up 3 days later in Kingston Public Hospital, tubes in her arms, her mother's tear-stained face above her, and a doctor's words that shattered her future. The damage to your spinal cord is permanent. The driver who hit her, minimal injuries, 6 months in jail, a fine he never paid. Tiana's rehabilitation was brutal. Jamaica's healthcare system, already stretched thin, offered limited support for spinal injury patients. Physical therapy sessions she couldn't afford. A manual wheelchair her family scraped together money to buy. Her small apartment had stairs she could no longer climb, so she moved back to her mother's house, a place with no ramps, narrow doorways, a bathroom she needed help accessing. Depression swallowed her whole. The friends who'd once filled her life gradually disappeared. It's hard to include a wheelchair at beach parties, at nightclubs with stairs, at hiking trips to Blue Mountains. Her event coordinator job vanished. Her boss claimed they needed someone more mobile. The rejection stung worse than the accident itself. By early 2022, Tiana's world had shrunk to her bedroom and a laptop. Her sister Keisha was working 2 jobs to help with medical expenses. Her mother's arthritis made caregiving painful. Tiana felt like a burden, a broken thing people tiptoed around with forced cheerfulness. But she had always been creative. She taught herself Adobe Creative Suite through YouTube tutorials, started taking freelance graphic design jobs on Fiverr. The pay was inconsistent, sometimes $50 a week, sometimes nothing, but it was something. It was purpose. The online world became her escape. On forums and social media, she could be whoever she wanted. No one asked about her wheelchair. No one looked at her with pity. And when she created her profiles on travel and creative communities, she used photos from before, not out of malice, but survival. Every time she'd tried being honest about her disability on dating sites, matches disappeared. Conversations died mid-sentence. She'd pour her heart into messages only to be met with silence once she mentioned the accident. The rejection carved deeper each time, confirming her worst fear, that her worth had been measured in working legs. So when she met Sheikh Rashid in that travel forum, when their conversations flowed effortlessly, when he laughed at her jokes and shared his vulnerabilities, she made a choice. She would be herself, her humor, her intelligence, her dreams, just not the complete physical truth. She told herself it wasn't lying, it was just selective disclosure. She'd tell him eventually, when he knew her well enough to see past the wheelchair. She hadn't planned to fall in love with him. She certainly hadn't planned for him to fall in love with her. Have you ever hidden a part of yourself because you feared rejection? Drop your thoughts in the comments. What started as a small omission was about to become a deadly secret. The 18th of January 2023. Tiana's message appeared in Sheikh Rashid's inbox at 11:47 p.m. Dubai time. Your perspective on modern Islamic architecture is fascinating. I'd love to hear more. What began as a discussion about geometric patterns in mosque design became daily exchanges. Tiana asked intelligent questions about his work, not about his wealth, but about his creative process. How did he balance tradition with innovation? What inspired his most daring projects? Sheikh Rashid found himself writing paragraphs, not the clipped responses he usually offered. Within 2 weeks, they'd moved from forum messages to WhatsApp. By February, they were video calling. Tiana had perfected her setup. Her laptop sat on a stack of books on her desk, camera angled to capture her face and shoulders. She'd positioned herself in front of her sister's artwork, colorful paintings that suggested creativity and depth. The wheelchair stayed just out of frame, an invisible reality 3 feet below the screen. During their first video call, Sheikh Rashid smiled when he saw her. You're even more beautiful than your photos. Tiana's heart clenched. "Thank you," she managed, hoping her guilt didn't show. Their conversations expanded beyond architecture into territories that mattered. Sheikh Rashid spoke about his faith, how he tried to balance Islamic principles with the modern excesses of Dubai. Tiana shared her grandmother's revivalist Christian traditions, the way spirituality in Jamaica mixed African retention with Caribbean identity. They discovered they both believed in something bigger than themselves, even if they called it by different names. Late-night calls became routine. While Dubai slept and Jamaica stirred with morning light, they'd talk for hours. Sheikh Rashid told her about growing up poor in old Dubai before the oil boom transformed everything. His father had been a pearl diver, hands scarred from years underwater. "I built my empire so my children would never know that struggle," he said. "But I wonder if I gave them too much comfort and not enough character." Tiana shared memories of her father, who died when she was 12, how he'd taught her to see beauty in broken things, rusted cars overtaken by jungle vines, crumbling colonial buildings where bougainvillea bloomed through cracks. He said, "Jamaica was proof that life insists on itself," she whispered. "Even in destruction, something grows." Sheikh Rashid's business partners noticed the change. He smiled more during meetings. He'd check his phone between appointments, something he'd never done before. His friend Khalid joked, "You look like a teenager in love." Sheikh Rashid didn't deny it. But Tiana's joy came wrapped in barbed wire. Every conversation felt like borrowed time. Every laugh carried the weight of her omission. She tried to hint at her situation. "I've been through some difficult changes. My life looks different than it used to." But Sheikh Rashid interpreted these as financial struggles or family drama, things that seemed manageable, fixable. In March, during a video call at sunset, Sheikh Rashid's voice turned serious. "Tiana, I need to tell you something. I'm 57 years old. I've been married, divorced, built businesses, traveled the world. I thought I'd experienced everything. But these past 2 months, talking to you, I haven't felt this way in decades, maybe never." He paused. "I think I'm falling in love with you." Tiana's eyes filled with tears, joy, and terror in equal measure. "I feel the same way," she said, her voice breaking. "You have no idea how much you've changed my life." What she didn't say. "You've fallen in love with an incomplete picture. You've fallen in love with who I was, not who I am." That night, she sat in her wheelchair in the dark, her phone glowing with his goodnight message. She typed and deleted a confession 7 times. Each version felt like detonating a bomb that would destroy the only happiness she'd known since the accident. She told herself she'd tell him soon. Next week, next month, when the love was strong enough to survive the truth. At what point does omission become deception? Where's the line? But as their connection deepened, so did the trap Tiana had unknowingly set for both of them. The 2nd of August 2023. Sheikh Rashid's message arrived during Tiana's afternoon design work. "I can't do this anymore. I need to see you. I'm booking a flight to Jamaica." Tiana's hands froze over her keyboard. Her heart hammered against her ribs. "I've waited long enough," his next message read. 6 months of talking through screens. I want to hold your hand. I want to take you to dinner. I want to know if this is as real in person as it feels in my heart." For Sheikh Rashid, the decision felt overdue. He'd already contacted a luxury travel agent, booking a suite at the Trial Club in Montego Bay oceanfront. Private beach access, the kind of place where proposals happened against sunset backdrops. He'd arranged a private car service for the 3-hour drive to Kingston. He'd purchased gifts, a diamond bracelet from Cartier, designer perfume, a first-edition book of Caribbean poetry he'd hunted down through collectors. His son Ahmed called from London. "Baba, you sound different, happy." "I'm flying to Jamaica next week," Sheikh Rashid said, "to meet someone special." "You're serious about this woman?" "I'm going to ask her to marry me." His business partners heard the news over coffee. Khalid raised his eyebrows. "You haven't even met her in person, and you're talking marriage?" Sheikh Rashid smiled. "When you know, you know. I'm too old to waste time on uncertainty." In his mind, he'd already mapped the future. He'd introduced Tiana to his family during Eid celebrations. His mother would need convincing, a Jamaican woman, a different culture, but she'd see what he saw. They'd split time between Dubai and Kingston. He'd fund whatever business dreams Tiana had. They'd finally fill the silence in his villa with laughter, conversation, life. Meanwhile, in Kingston, Tiana stared at her phone like it was a loaded weapon. Her sister Keisha found her crying in her bedroom. What happened? He's coming here. Next week. Keisha's face hardened. Tiana, you have to tell him. Right now. Before he gets on that plane. I know. Do you? Because this has gone too far. He thinks he's meeting one person and he's going to find another. That's not fair to either of you. That night, Tiana called him. She'd rehearsed her confession a dozen times. Sheikh Rashid, there's something I need to tell you about my health. But he interrupted, his voice warm with excitement. I've been thinking about where we should have our first dinner. There's a restaurant in Kingston, Strawberry Hill. I've made reservations. I want everything to be perfect for you. The words died in her throat. She tried again. I just need you to know that I'm not. You're nervous. I understand. I'm nervous too. But Tiana, we know each other. We've shared our souls for 6 months. Meeting in person is just the next chapter. She hung up, her courage evaporating. He loves me for who I am inside, she told herself, wheeling to her closet. He'll understand. He has to understand. She bought a new outfit, a bright yellow dress that her mother helped her alter. She cleaned her house obsessively. She practiced what she'd say when he arrived, how she'd explain, how she'd make him see that the accident hadn't changed who she was fundamentally. Her sister's warning echoed. You need to tell him the truth before he gets here. But she didn't. The night before his arrival, neither of them slept. Sheikh Rashid lay awake in Dubai, imagining their first embrace. Tiana lay awake in Kingston, praying for a miracle she didn't believe in. What would you do in Tiana's position? Confess beforehand or hope for acceptance in person? Neither of them could have predicted the explosion that was about to detonate. The 15th of August 2023, 2:34 p.m. Sheikh Rashid's Emirates flight touched down at Norman Manley International Airport, and the moment the cabin doors opened, Jamaica announced itself. Heat rolled through the aircraft like a living thing, thick, wet, carrying the salt of the Caribbean Sea and something sweeter, tropical flowers blooming in air that felt like breathing through warm cloth. He moved through customs with his diplomatic courtesy visa, collected his designer luggage, and found his driver holding a sign with his name. The man's smile was wide, genuine. Welcome to Jamaica, boss. First time? First time, Sheikh Rashid confirmed, sliding into the back of the black SUV. The 3-hour drive from Montego Bay to Kingston was a sensory assault. Jamaican patois crackled from passing cars, music he didn't recognize but felt in his chest. Roadside vendors sold jerk chicken under makeshift tents, smoke rising into the afternoon sky. Mountains draped in green pressed close to the highway, then fell away to reveal glimpses of coastline so blue it hurt to look at. Sheikh Rashid rehearsed his words. Tiana, from the moment I heard your voice. No, too formal. These 6 months have been too vague. He touched the velvet box in his jacket pocket, the diamond ring he'd had sized based on a guess, a hope. As they entered Kingston, the landscape shifted. His resort in Montego Bay had been manicured perfection, infinity pools, white sand beaches, staff who anticipated every need. But Tiana's neighborhood was real in a way that luxury never was. Modest homes with metal grills on windows, children playing football in the street, music pouring from open doors, clothes drying on lines strung between houses, paint peeling in the humidity, revealing layers of previous colors underneath. The SUV stopped in front of a small house, pale blue with white trim, a narrow concrete path leading to the front door. Sheikh Rashid checked the address 3 times. This was it. He wasn't bothered by the modest surroundings. Money had never been what this relationship was about. If anything, it confirmed what he'd suspected. Tiana needed someone to take care of her, to lift her out of struggle. He could be that person. He wanted to be that person. He straightened his shirt, checked his reflection in the car window, and walked to the door. His heart thundered. His palms were actually sweating, something that hadn't happened before a business deal in decades. He knocked. Seconds passed. 10, 20, 30. He heard movement inside, something rolling across the floor. A pause, a breath, a voice, her voice saying something he couldn't make out. Then the door began to open. The world slowed. The hinges creaked in the humidity. The gap widened inch by inch. Light from inside spilled onto the concrete step. A shadow moved in the doorway's frame, and then he saw it. Chrome wheels, rubber tires, the metal frame of a wheelchair. His eyes traveled up. Tiana sat in the chair, her hands gripping the armrests. She wore the yellow dress, her hair done beautifully, makeup highlighting her cheekbones. She was exactly as beautiful as her photos, and completely different from what he'd imagined. Her face held everything at once: hope that he'd understand, terror that he wouldn't, apology for the shock she knew was written across his features. Sheikh Rashid stood frozen. His mind raced, trying to reconcile the woman in front of him with the woman he'd built in his imagination. The woman he'd pictured walking beside him, through Dubai, dancing at their wedding, climbing the stairs of his villa. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Finally his voice came out barely above a whisper. You never told me." What happened next would be witnessed only by the walls that contained their confrontation. Sheikh Rashid stepped inside, his movements mechanical, controlled in the way a man controls himself when every instinct screams to run. The door closed behind him with a click that sounded like a cell locking. "Please, let me explain," Tiana started, wheeling backward to give him space. "Explain what?" His voice was ice. "That everything was a lie?" "My feelings weren't a lie." Tears already streamed down her face. "I am who I said I was. My mind, my heart, everything we talked about that was real, that was me." He paced the small living room, 3 steps, one direction, 3 steps back, like a caged animal. His hands opened and closed at his sides. 6 months, Tiana. 6 months of video calls. 6 months of planning a future. "And you never thought to mention this?" "I tried." "You tried?" His laugh was bitter. "When? When did you try?" "I was scared." Her voice cracked. "Every time I've told someone, they disappeared. They stopped responding. They looked at me like I was broken, like I was less than." "So you decided to wait until I flew across the world? Until I told my children I was going to remarry? Until my business partners started gossiping about the mysterious woman who'd captured my heart?" The cultural weight of his humiliation pressed down on him. He'd told people. He'd been vulnerable, something men in his position rarely afforded themselves. What would they say now? That old fool Sheikh Rashid, deceived by an internet woman, that he'd lost his mind over a fantasy. Tiana wheeled to her shelf, grabbed her phone with shaking hands. Look at these." She pulled up photos from 2019, 2020, her standing at beaches, hiking trails, dance floors. This was me. A drunk driver hit me in 2021. One night, one choice someone else made, and my entire life changed. Her voice broke. "But I'm still me, inside. The woman you fell in love with, she's still here." Sheikh Rashid stared at the photos, at the life she used to have. "You took away my choice," he said quietly. "You decided what I could handle, what I would accept. You deceived me. I gave you the real me. You gave me a performance." His voice rose. "A carefully staged show where I could only see what you wanted me to see." Mrs. Patterson next door would later tell police she heard raised voices at 3:47 p.m., loud enough to make her turn down her television. "I traveled across the world for a fantasy," Sheikh Rashid said, his voice shaking with rage and something deeper hurt. "I opened my heart to someone who didn't exist." "I exist," Tiana shouted back, anger finally breaking through her tears. "I'm right here. The only thing that changed was my legs. You fell in love with a person, not a body. In my culture, marriage means partnership. It means building a family, creating a legacy. And you think I can't do that because of a wheelchair? I think you lied to me because you knew I'd never choose this." The words exploded out of him. "You knew no man would willingly sign up to be a caretaker, to deal with the medical issues, the limitations, the—" "Say it." Tiana's voice turned cold. "Say what you really mean. You think I'm worthless now? Damaged goods? Don't put words in my mouth. You don't need to say it. It's written all over your face. Your love was conditional. It depended on me being whole." "I am not shallow." Sheikh Rashid's face flushed with rage. "I came here ready to marry you. I have a ring in my pocket. I rearranged my entire life for you, for who you thought I was, because that's who you showed me." The argument devolved into accusations flying like weapons. His concerns about what his mother would say, about social perception, about the expectations of partnership. Her rage at being reduced to her disability, at having her worth measured by mobility, both of them screaming their pain, neither hearing the other. "You made a fool of me," Sheikh Rashid said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You made me feel like my life ended with that accident." Tiana shot back. "Like I'm not worthy of love unless I can walk." What happened in the next moments, the exact sequence, would be debated in court. But the medical examiner's report would be clear. Blunt force trauma to the head, bruising consistent with strangulation, defensive wounds on the victim's arms. Mrs. Patterson told investigators the shouting stopped abruptly at 4:23 p.m. The silence that followed was somehow worse than the noise. Could there have been a different outcome? Where did this tragedy become inevitable? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you are enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. But the horror was far from over. The silence in Tiana's living room was absolute. Sheikh Rashid stood over her body, his chest heaving, his hands trembling, blood on his knuckles, her yellow dress twisted awkwardly. The wheelchair tipped on its side. Her eyes stared at nothing. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." Reality crashed down in waves. What had he done? This wasn't him. He wasn't, this couldn't be real. His mind fractured into survival mode. He had to leave. Now. He stumbled toward the door, forgetting his jacket on her couch, forgetting the velvet ring box that had fallen from his pocket, forgetting to wipe surfaces he'd touched. His hands shook so violently he could barely turn the doorknob. The drive back toward Montego Bay was a blur of panic. Other cars honked as he swerved. His driver had already left. He'd told him to return at 6 p.m. Sheikh Rashid had rented a car for flexibility. That decision now felt like providence or damnation. 40 minutes outside Kingston, he pulled into a Shell station. In the bathroom mirror, he looked like someone else. Blood spatter on his collar, scratches on his neck where she'd fought back. He scrubbed his hands raw under cold water, used paper towels to clean his face, turned his shirt inside out. The man staring back at him was a stranger. He pulled out his phone with wet, shaking hands, changed his flight. The 7:45 p.m. departure instead of his scheduled return on Friday, the earliest available. The airline charged him an extra $800. He barely noticed. At Norman Manley International Airport, security footage would later show him at 6:52 p.m., moving through the terminal too fast, looking over his shoulder, his gait unsteady. He'd checked no luggage, left everything at the hotel, just his passport, wallet, and the weight of what he'd done. He passed through security. The officer barely glanced at his diplomatic visa. Through passport control. The stamp in his passport felt like a guilty verdict. Gate 12. Boarding in 30 minutes. At 6:15 p.m., Keisha had arrived at her sister's house. Tiana hadn't answered 6 calls, hadn't responded to texts. After the morning's argument about telling Sheikh Rashid the truth, Keisha had been worried all day. She found the door unlocked. Her screams brought neighbors running. The police arrived at 6:24 p.m. They photographed the scene, the overturned wheelchair, the defensive wounds, the jacket left behind with a Dubai business card in the pocket. They found the ring box. They found Sheikh Rashid's name in Tiana's phone, months of messages, his flight information she'd saved. At 6:15 p.m., Kingston police contacted airport security. Sheikh Rashid sat at gate 12, his leg bouncing compulsively. 15 minutes until boarding. He kept his head down, avoiding eye contact with other passengers. His mind kept replaying the moment her body went limp, the moment he realized he couldn't take it back. Sheikh Rashid Al-Hamad. 2 officers appeared beside him, hands on their service weapons. His face crumpled. He tried to stand, then sat back down heavily. Other passengers stared. A child asked her mother what was happening. "I need to go home," he said weakly. "I need to." "You need to come with us, sir." They led him away in handcuffs. He didn't resist. By the time they reached the security office, he'd collapsed into a chair, and the words tumbled out. "She lied to me. She made a fool of me. I traveled across the world, and she wasn't who she said she was." But the court of public opinion had already begun deliberating. The evidence against Sheikh Rashid Al-Hamad was overwhelming. Airport security cameras captured his frantic arrival at 6:52 p.m., shirt inside out, no luggage. Mrs. Patterson's testimony placed the shouting between 3:47 p.m. and 4:23 p.m. The digital trail was undeniable. 6 months of WhatsApp messages, video call logs, flight bookings, hotel reservations. His jacket remained at the crime scene, business cards in the pocket bearing his company's name and Dubai address. When investigators accessed Tiana's laptop, they found everything. Hundreds of messages where Sheikh Rashid spoke of marriage, of building a future together. Photos she'd sent him, all carefully cropped at the waist, all predating November 2021. Her graphic design portfolio showcasing real talent. Drafts of unsent messages where she'd tried to confess, deleted before sending. The case exploded internationally within 48 hours. Social media fractured into warring camps. One side saw a man who'd been catfished, emotionally manipulated, driven to a breaking point by a woman who'd lied about something fundamental. She knew what she was doing, they argued. She knew he'd never come if he knew the truth. The other side saw a disabled woman murdered for daring to seek love. He killed her because she was in a wheelchair. Disability rights advocates declared, "This is what ableism looks like at its most violent." Protests erupted in Kingston and Miami, where large Jamaican diaspora communities demanded justice for Tiana. The trial began in February 2024 at the Home Circuit Court in Kingston. Prosecutors presented the chat history as evidence of genuine affection between two people. Yes, she omitted information about her physical condition, the lead prosecutor argued, but she never lied about who she was as a person. Her humor, her intelligence, her dreams, everything he claimed to love about her was real, and for that truth, he killed her. The defense built their case on provocation. "My client was deceived for 6 months," his attorney insisted. "He was lured across the world under false pretenses. He invested his emotions, his reputation, his future into someone who deliberately misrepresented herself. When confronted with this manipulation, he experienced a psychological break. This was not premeditated murder, it was a tragic reaction to extreme emotional distress." Expert witnesses debated the ethics of online dating disclosure. A psychologist testified about the trauma disabled people face in dating environments. Miss Grant feared rejection because rejection was her consistent experience. Her deception was born from survival instinct, not malice. A digital forensics expert countered, "She systematically curated a false image over 6 months. This wasn't a simple omission, it was calculated deception." Character witnesses painted complex portraits. Sheikh Rashid's business partners testified to his charitable work, schools built in Pakistan, hospitals funded in Sudan, scholarships for underprivileged students. "He's not a violent man," Khalid insisted. "He's generous, thoughtful, devout." This was completely out of character. Tiana's family and friends described a woman who'd survived tremendous hardship with grace. Her former clients praised her graphic design work. Her physiotherapist testified to her determination. "She wanted so badly to rebuild her life," Keisha sobbed on the stand. "And just when she'd found happiness, he took it all away." The jury deliberated for 4 days, struggling with questions that had no easy answers. How much deception justifies rage? Where does disappointment end and violence begin? What did society owe to disabled people seeking love? When Sheikh Rashid took the stand, his voice was hollow. "I'm not a murderer. I never thought I could do something like this. I broke. Everything I'd built in my mind, everything I'd hoped for, it shattered in that doorway. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just telling you I broke." The verdict came on the 8th of March 2024. Guilty of voluntary manslaughter, reduced from second-degree murder due to provocation. The judge sentenced him to 15 years in a Jamaican prison. Do you think justice was served? Was the sentence fair? The case of Sheikh Rashid and Tiana Grant became more than a murder trial. It became a mirror, reflecting the darkest corners of our digital age. Online dating has exploded globally, with over 366 million users worldwide as of 2024. But studies reveal troubling statistics. 53% of people admit to lying on their dating profiles. Weight, age, employment status, relationship history. The lies vary, but the motivation remains consistent. Fear of rejection, desperation for connection, the belief that truth will come later, once emotional investment makes it harder to walk away. But Tiana's case highlighted a conversation the disability community had been trying to have for years. Research shows that 75% of people with visible disabilities report being immediately rejected on dating apps once their condition is disclosed. Wheelchair users describe matches unmatching within seconds of seeing photos. One study found that profiles mentioning disability receive 30% fewer responses than identical profiles without that disclosure. "She just wanted to be loved for who she was," Tiana's mother said in a statement after the sentencing. "My daughter was funny, intelligent, creative, and kind. The accident didn't change those things, but the world treated her like she'd stopped being a complete person the moment she couldn't walk. From Dubai, Sheikh Rashid's eldest son released his own statement. "Our father was a good man who made a terrible mistake. He opened his heart in a way we'd never seen, and the betrayal he felt, whether justified or not, broke something in him. We don't excuse what he did, but we mourn the father we knew, the man who existed before that afternoon in Kingston." The case forced uncomfortable questions about disclosure and dating. When is someone obligated to reveal medical conditions, disabilities, or physical differences? Is omission the same as lying? Where does personal privacy end and deception begin? Psychologists pointed to the unique dangers of online relationships, the way we build complete fantasies around partial information, investing emotionally in projections rather than people. Without physical presence, we fill in gaps with our hopes rather than reality. Sheikh Rashid had fallen in love with an idea, and Tiana had fallen in love with being seen as more than her wheelchair. Cultural analysts examined how honor and pride, especially in traditional societies, can turn disappointment into rage. The shame Sheikh Rashid felt wasn't just personal, it was social, familial, tied to his entire identity as a man of status and judgment. Two people destroyed by fear and pride. Tiana feared rejection so deeply she chose dangerous deception. Sheikh Rashid's pride was so fragile that revelation felt like annihilation. What could have prevented this tragedy? Earlier, honesty, certainly, but also compassion in the face of difficult truth, understanding instead of rage, grace in disappointment, the recognition that human beings are complex, flawed, worthy of dignity even when they fail us. Both made choices born from pain. Both paid prices no one should pay. What's your biggest takeaway from this story? Have you experienced deception in online relationships? Tiana's wheelchair still sits in her mother's house in Kingston, yellow fabric draped over the seat, the dress she wore that day, washed clean but never worn again. Her family couldn't bring themselves to donate it. It remains a haunting symbol of a life that deserved so much more than it received. 7,000 miles away, Sheikh Rashid Al-Hamad sits in a cell at the Tower Street Adult Correctional Center, another kind of prison, one built by his own hands. He'll be 72 when he's released if he survives that long. His children visit twice a year. The conversations are strained, filled with things no one knows how to say. 2 lives lost, one to violence in a living room on an August afternoon, one to consequences that will stretch across decades. This case reminds us that behind every dating profile, every carefully curated photo, every witty message, there's a real human being carrying real pain, real hope, real desperation for connection. The digital world lets us edit ourselves, but it can't edit what happens when reality and fantasy collide. Tiana's family established the Tiana Grant Memorial Fund for disabled artists in Jamaica, providing grants and equipment to creators whose mobility challenges shouldn't limit their dreams. Her graphic design work now hangs in Kingston galleries, a testament to talent that outlived the body that created it. A documentary titled "The Distance Between Us" is currently in production, exploring the case's ethical complexities and what it reveals about modern love, disability, discrimination, and the violence pride can justify. This story should never have ended this way. Remember, honesty might hurt, but deception can kill. Loneliness makes us vulnerable, but violence is always a choice. We must see beyond physical limitations to human worth and extend grace even in disappointment. If this story affected you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true crime stories that make us think. And please, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? And what's your perspective on this tragic case?